Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video here on the ParkerLovesSports YouTube channel. And in today's video, we are going over my top 10 defensive linemen in the 2024 NFL Draft. Now, this is the daily series leading up to the NFL Draft, which is in 9 days. And we are on defensive linemen. Tomorrow's going to be edge rushers. Then it's going to be linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, and then my top 20 players in the 2024 NFL Draft. And then we're going to do then we're going to do a Denver Broncos, my final mock draft, and we're going to go over 3 scenarios in that. And then we're going to be going over my final 2024 NFL mock. Now, a couple of notes that I wanted to say before we get started is, first things first, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as the support is greatly appreciated. I'm trying to do this as a career one day, and so by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, your support helps out greatly. But some housekeeping notes are, I think I said that I was going to do some double uploads. That is most likely not going to happen because 9 days away, I could release a mock draft today, tomorrow, in a couple days. But I decided that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to do one full mock, or I guess I'm going to do for the Denver Broncos a mock draft going over the 3 different scenarios that could happen of us trading up, us staying put at 12, or us trading down. And so I'm not going to be releasing double uploads. I have some videos that maybe I will double upload on towards the end of this daily series, a couple days before the draft, but that's just what I want to mention there. And then another thing is, I got a comment today, and it mentioned how I should put my face cam on so that people get to know me and who I am more, and get to know, I guess, the presenter, essentially. And I really appreciate the comment if you are watching this. And I was honestly going to plan on doing this after the draft because you guys know I will do face cams, or if you're a longtime viewer, oh my goodness, I can't speak. If you're a longtime viewer, you will know that I put my face cam on for special events when I go live for the draft, or when I go live in general, I put on my face cam. Then there's some videos that I'll put on my face cam, but I was planning on making the face cam a permanent thing as soon as the draft is over. As soon as these rankings are done, this videos leading up to the drafts are over, and the draft streams are over, every single video going forward will have my face cam in it. And then the final thing that I want to mention, I guess 2 kind of things, but it's going to be in one, is the first thing is I do my own scouting and whatnot. I watch film, but I'm not an expert by any means, as much as I want to be an expert and as much as I'm still improving and hope to be an expert one day. I am still learning as well. So I watch a ton of videos and I read up on a bunch of these guys to learn information and get more information, as well as I do some of my own scouting. So this is when I give you the notes of who these players are, this is a combination of not only my scouting experience, but other people as well. And then just a quick follow-up is I put the stats on the screen, and stats can be misleading and they're not the full story, so don't judge them. They're just easy to put on the screen because it's just easy graphic-wise. So that's why I do it. But with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into this. But as first, I have to remind you that Jesus is King, and I pray that you give your life to him, as he has got a plan and a purpose for you. And I just truly hope that you accept Jesus with your whole heart and believe that he died on the cross for your sins. And if you truly believe with your whole heart that Jesus sacrificed himself on the cross, lived a perfect life, died on the cross, and then rose from the dead 3 days later, then you'll go to heaven. It's that simple. It's that easy. A lot of people think that it's by how many good works we do or how many times we go to church, but the only thing that gets us to heaven is our faith in Jesus and the works that he did on the cross. It's important to me, and I'm going to continue to share this at the beginning of every single one of my videos. A lot of people don't like it, but I don't care. I'm going to continue to spread the message and share the gospel because it's important to me as a Christian. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump in to the 2024 NFL Draft, my top 10 defensive linemen. Coming in at number 10, that is going to be Justin Aboigbe, defensive lineman out of Alabama. Now, for me, Aboigbe is one of my guys and one of the players that I want the Denver Broncos to target. You could probably get him around the 4th round-ish from what I've seen, maybe even the 5th round. Now, Aboigbe is one of the best run defenders in the 2024 NFL draft, and to me, that is the main reason why I want him. We struggled at stopping the run this past season, and honestly, for the past few seasons, we kind of got to we kind of got to the passer. Geez, I need to lock in here. We kind of got to the passer, but in my opinion, the big area that we need to improve at on the defensive line is in terms of run stopping. And Justin Aboigbe is one of the best run defenders in the entire draft. Of course, we do want to get some pass rush from the interior. We do want to get that interior pass rush. But I feel like the run defense is going to be a big aspect of who we draft as a defensive lineman. And if we choose to wait, Aboigbe would be one of those guys who I want to target. His size and frame give him the ability to play in multiple fronts. I am sorry for hitting the microphone if you could hear that. He stands at 6'4", 297 pounds. Now, Aboigbe is a sure tackler who will fully wrap up and bring down the runner when he gets his arms on him. Aboigbe, though, lacks explosiveness and quickness to get off the line, which makes him a below-average interior pass rusher. He does need to develop as an interior pass rusher in the NFL to have that complete game, but purely in stopping the run, Aboigbe is one of the best. Now, I'm not saying he is the best because there are other players who I think are better at stopping the run, but Aboigbe is one of the better ones in the draft. Now, I guess I should mention what classifies as an interior defensive lineman. Now, a lot of you guys will know this because a lot of you guys are football fans and enjoy football as well, but an interior defensive lineman, specifically for the Broncos, they're my favorite team. We run a 3-4 defense with the outside linebackers being the pass rushers and then the nose tackle and the defensive ends being essentially those interior guys. So, yeah, essentially the defensive ends are not edge rushers in a 3-4, but if you're running a 4-3, the defensive ends are the edge rushers, and you're looking at the defensive tackles as these inside guys. It can be a little bit complicated, but that's essentially what I mean by interior defensive lineman. During his career with Alabama, Aboigbe played in 48 games with 58 solo tackles, 65 assist tackles, 123 total tackles, 16 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks. Moving on to my number 9 interior defensive lineman, that is going to be Leonard Taylor out of Miami. Now, Taylor has a big physical frame at 6'3", 303 pounds. He has 33 and 7/8 inch arms, and he has 9-inch hands, and he has a ton of athleticism. Now, while Taylor has a big frame, he does need to work on his technique as a run defender and a pass rusher. I would say Taylor is decent as a run defender and decent as a pass rusher, but in my opinion, he's not elite, or I would even say great at these areas. I guess you could say great, but definitely not elite in any of those areas. So right now, to me, Leonard Taylor would be a rotational depth guy in his early career and then could develop into that starter, whereas Aboigbe, while he's ranked lower, I think if you want to put him in on running downs, you could absolutely put him in there and he would be able to stop the run. So Leonard Taylor does have some developing to do as a run defender and a pass rusher, but he is a better pass rusher than he is a run defender but he does need to improve in both areas like I mentioned. He has a quick, explosive get off to the line, and he wins early because of that quick and early explosive. He's very explosive off the line, and because of that explosiveness, he gets off the line and engages with his blockers early, and that lets him win pass rush moves early. He's at his best when playing in 3 technique. Now, what is 3 technique? Maybe some of you guys don't know. I'm sure a lot of you do know, but that's when you line up in between the guard and the tackle, specifically on the outside of the guard's shoulder. That is where he is best, according to Lance Zierlein. Now, during his career with the Miami Hurricanes, Leonard played in 28 games with 25 solo tackles, 39 assist tackles, 64. He had 64 total tackles, 22.5 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. Moving on to my number 8. My number 8 defensive lineman in this draft. I keep going back and forth in my head of, do I want to say interior defensive lineman or defensive lineman, and that causes me to stutter, and so I'm going to try and stop doing that. I'm just going to say defensive lineman. So my number 8 defensive lineman in this year's class is going to be Mason Smith. Now, Mason Smith is a very exciting, high upside prospect with tons of tools. He has got a ton of tools to his arsenal, but he lacked a lot of production in college, only playing 8 games in his first two seasons. He played 12 last season, but in his first two seasons, he played 7 his first year and then 1 last year. And the reason why he missed so many games was because he had a shoulder injury in 2021, which limited him to 7 games. And then he had a torn ACL in 2022, which limited him to 1 game. So very little games played for Mason Smith. But this past season, he did play in 12 games to kind of show who he is. Now, a lot of people were predicting him potentially being a first-round pick. Didn't really play up to those standards. I would say he's like a 3rd, 4th round type of guy. Maybe could sneak into the back end of the 2nd, but I would feel comfortable taking him in the 3rd at the earliest. Now, Smith is a 6'5", 306-pound defensive lineman with long 35-inch arms, and he ran a 5:01 40-yard dash at the combine. I believe it was at the combine, yeah. Now, according to Lance Zierlein, Mason Smith is best suited to play as a 3-4 defensive end, which is good for the Broncos because obviously we run a 3-4. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to go to a 3-4 team. He could absolutely go to a 4-3 team, but he is best suited as a 3-4 defensive end, and that is essentially going to be, I would say, would be a defensive tackle kind of in a 4-3, but obviously, like I mentioned earlier, the defensive ends in the 3-4 are not edge rushers, but he would be able to not only affect the run game, but he would also be able to provide some interior pass rush if need be. Now, Smith is at his best when he is a pass rusher, but he needs to improve as a run defender. Smith is a sure tackler. He's a sure tackler, and he will tackle any defender he gets his hand on. He's not going to let many go. A lot of times you wrap up and obviously defenders can break tackles. Mason Smith doesn't let you break many tackles because he is a sure tackler. He's going to wrap up and get you on the ground as soon as possible. Now you can see his very limited games, obviously 20 games, majority of them this past season with him playing 12. He had 22 solo tackles, 25 assist tackles, 22 solo, 25 assist, 47 total, 9.5 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks. Now, I would not be shocked if Mason Smith ends up being a steal in this draft because of his upside. And quite frankly, I wanted to put him higher. Now, I am an LSU fan, but I kind of wanted to put him higher, but I just can't because of the production. Now, yeah, Mason Smith, number 8, but could easily be a steal in this draft if he pans out. The injury history is a bit concerning and just him not being available. But with his tools and upside, I think he could absolutely end up being one of the biggest steals in this year's draft. Moving on to my number 7 defensive lineman, that is going to be Rukarororo. Now, I pronounced it wrong in my first time going over the top, I think it was like top 10 prospects at every position before the combine. Definitely pronounced it wrong, but it's Rukarororo. Now, Ororo excels as a run defender, and he's a decent pass rusher, but where he makes his bread and butter or has his bread and butter is as a run defender. His pass rush does need some improvement, but he has the tools to be a great pass rusher. As of right now, though, there does need to be a little bit of improvement at that. But I think he's solid, but does need some improvement. Now, he has a good size, or he has a good combination of size and athleticism. He is 6'4", 294 pounds. He ran a 4.89 40-yard dash and had a 32-inch vertical jump with a 9'8" broad jump. Ororo explodes off the line and gets a quick jump as the rush. He gets a quick jump off as a rusher and uses his strong hands to neutralize defenders. He has a good punch to just jab it in and get by defenders. He uses his leverage to win against offensive linemen, but a big critique that I've seen a lot of people have is that he needs to work on his pad level. Kind of, I guess, doesn't really stand fully up, but stands up a little bit, needs to get that pad level lower, because if you get under his pad level, obviously you're going to have an effective time as a blocker. So needs to work on getting down and playing with a lower pad level. Now, during his career with the Clemson Tigers, he played in 43 games with 39 solo tackles, 49 assist tackles, 88 total tackles, had 25.5 tackles for loss, and 12 sacks. Moving on to my number 6 edge rusher, it is going to be none other than Braden Fisk, the defensive lineman out of Florida State. Now, I feel like a lot of people might be shocked by this, and I'm shocked that I don't have him higher, but I could see him go. I could see him going a little bit higher. To me, these next 3 guys at 6, 5, and 4, I think you could rearrange in any order, and I wouldn't complain, and I wouldn't really have any arguments. But Braden Fisk is my number 6 interior defensive lineman. He has a solid build at 6'4", 292 pounds, but he lacks length to him, with his arms only being 31 inches, which, I mean, isn't bad, but for a defensive lineman, they're a little bit smaller than expected. Now, he has great athleticism to him, as he ran a 4.78 40-yard dash, which is terrific for a defensive lineman. He had a 33.5 vertical jump and a 9'9" broad jump. He also has great strength to him, as he benched 26 reps of 225 at the NFL Combine. Now, Fisk plays with a high motor, being a great run defender and a pass rusher. He's got a great combination of both. If you want him to be a run defender, great. If you want him to be a pass rusher, great. He can do both. He is extremely talented. He explodes off the line quickly and gets into the backfield, either to stop the run, to plug the gap to force the runner to go somewhere else, or as a pass rusher to rush the quarterback and take him down. He's easily able to disengage from his blocker and tackle the runner if they run by him. And what I mean by that is, if Braden Fisk is trying to make a move and he's being blocked by an offensive lineman, he's able to stop, disengage, and if the runner is right by him, reach out his arm and just tackle the running back to the ground. Braden Fisk is very, very good at that. Now, during his career with the Florida State Seminoles, Fisk played in 55 games with 93 solo tackles. He had 98 assist tackles for a total of 191 tackles. He had 36 tackles for loss and 19.5 sacks. Moving on to my number 5 defensive lineman. This is going to be Michael Hall Jr. out of Ohio State. Now, Michael Hall Jr. is an elite pass rusher and a solid run defender, but his run defense can use some improvement. I feel like a lot of players in this class can use some help as a run defender. Kind of like when we were going over offensive tackles, or not offensive tackles, kind of like when we were going over the tight ends yesterday, how they all need to improve at blocking. It's not as significant, but I feel like a lot of these players need to develop either as a pass rusher or as a runner. And that's common, I guess. I don't know necessarily why I brought it up, but I think it's about 50-50 of, I don't know if about 50-50, but there is areas like that some need to improve. Like Iborgbe needs to improve as a pass rusher, but great as a run defender. Michael Hall Jr. is a solid pass rusher, but he's an elite pass rusher, solid run defender, and he needs to improve on his run defense. Now, Michael Hall Jr. is on the smaller side for a defensive lineman at 6'3", 290 pounds, which is crazy to say that 6'3" is considered small. That's just how the NFL is. But he is an undersized defensive lineman at 6'3", 290 pounds, but he makes up for it with his athleticism. He has great footwork strength, and he has quick, strong hands, which makes him very capable of beating his blockers and neutralizing them with that hand punch. While he is a solid run defender, there is still work to be done to improve his run defense, but like I mentioned earlier, he's an elite pass rusher. If you want that interior pass rush, Michael Hall Jr. will be one of the better ones that you can find. You can probably find him. You can probably find Michael Hall Jr. I'd say around the 3rd round if you want to pick up someone who can provide interior pass rush. But yeah, during his career with the Ohio State Buckeyes, he played in 26 games with 19 solo tackles, 26 assist tackles, 45 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. Moving on to my number 4 defensive lineman, it is going to be Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. Now, on the contrary of Michael Hall, Chris Jenkins is a great run defender and a good pass rusher. Now, he is a better run defender than he is a pass rusher, but both areas can use improvement at the next level. Obviously, I'm sure many of you know, but he has NFL pedigree with his father playing in the NFL for both the Carolina Panthers and the New York Jets. Now, he is a smaller defensive tackle, similar to Michael Hall at 6'3", 299 pounds, but he has a solid length to him with 34-inch arms, and he has 9 3/8 inch hands. Geez, I don't know why eighths is kind of hard for me to say when talking right now, but 9 3/8 inch hands, and he uses his hands to get leverage against his blocker. Now, Jenkins is able to stand his own ground when fighting against run blockers, plugging gaps and tackling the runner when they obviously are trying to run by him. Jenkins is a great athlete who uses his athleticism to disrupt the play, whether it's a run or a pass play, whether it's plugging a gap, forcing the running back to bounce outside or bounce to a different gap, taking down the runner himself, or rushing the passer to get pressure on the quarterback. He uses his athleticism to get that done. In terms of his athleticism, he ran a 4.91 40-yard dash, had a 30-inch vertical, and a 9'7" broad jump. During his career with the Michigan Wolverines, he played in 37 games with 54 solo tackles, 59 assist tackles, 113 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks. Now, moving on to my number 3, and before you comment anything, I just want to say I have seen the news. I have seen him driving while intoxicated, and I have seen that arrest news. This list, when I compiled it, this is based purely off the talent, and I'm not knocking for off the field issues. Now, I would knock him for the off the field issues if I hadn't finalized my rankings. My rankings are finalized, so I'm not really going to go ahead, disrupt that, and mess that up. So this is just purely based on the talent. Obviously, because of his arrest, he is most likely going to drop in the NFL draft. So just keep that in mind. But where his ranking is purely based on the talent and everything that he showed at college. Like I mentioned, recently ran into legal trouble, which will affect his draft stock. However, when the list was made, it was made purely based on talent and known information, and this didn't happen until after my rankings were finalized. Now, in terms of who T'Vondre Sweat is a massive human being, and he uses his height and everything in that massive frame to plug gaps, eat blocks, and be an overall beast as a run defender, as he is 6'4.5", or he's 6 feet 4.5 inches, who is 366 pounds. And he will, like I mentioned earlier, he will literally eat and plug up a whole gap, which forces the running back to go into a different gap, into a different lane, because he eats up the gap, he eats up the blockers, and that opens his teammates up to making plays. And it's just impressive. The stats aren't really going to show it all the time, but he is a playmaker by letting his teammates make the plays, because he eats up blocks and eats up gaps. Now, while Sweat is an elite run defender, he is also an elite pass rusher as well. Now, he's not explosive off the ball, but it takes an extreme amount of effort to move him. You're not going to be able to move him easily as a blocker. You're going to have to have oh my goodness, why can't I get this out? You're going to have an insanely strong guard to move him one-on-one, but honestly, you might have to double team him if you want to move him, and if you want to open a gap and clear a gap, you're going to have to double team him. That's how big and strong he is. It's not going to be an easy effort to move Sweat. Now, teams will have to focus on blocking Sweat, or teams have focused on double teaming and blocking Sweat, which opens up his teammates to make the play, as I mentioned earlier. And so the stats aren't going to show that. But when you watch his film, he plugs gaps and eats those gaps very well, especially as a run defender. But like I mentioned, he can also be a very effective pass rusher as well. Now, during his career with the Texas Longhorns, Sweat played in 51 games with 47 solo tackles, 80 assist tackles, 127 total tackles. He had 17.5 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. Moving on to my number 2 defensive lineman in this year's class, it is going to be Jer'Zhan Newton, a.k.a. Johnny Newton, out of Illinois. For the longest time this year in this draft season, Newton was the clear number 1 defensive lineman. However, Byron Murphy of Texas just leapfrogged him. Spoiler alert, I know. But Jer'Zhan Newton is an elite pass and run defender. Excels at both as a pass rusher and as a run defender. He has strong upper body strength, but is undersized and he lacks some length. So the strength does make up for it, but he is an undersized guy at 6'2", 304 pounds, and 32 3/8 inch arms. Now, he's a versatile player with a lot of athleticism who is best suited as an interior defender, in my opinion. But also, in my opinion, I feel like he could be moved to an edge rusher if push comes to shove. Now, I don't think that's the best idea. I don't think he would be a great edge rusher, but I think he would be a serviceable edge rusher. At least that's my own opinion. I didn't get that from anybody. I think he can play as an edge rusher if you need him to, but he is best suited as an interior defensive lineman. Newton has quick feet and hands, and he uses both in combination to make a play, either in the run or passing game. He has elite athleticism where he can be a 3-down player on defense. A lot of the times, you can't play your defensive line, or players don't play necessarily all 3 downs. For example, Eboigbe, he would most likely play only on surefire running downs. Of course, he can develop as a pass rusher and then be able to play all downs, but he would only be playing on sure rundowns, and then there would be some guys who excel at pass rushing but aren't great as a run defender, would only play on pure passing downs. Jer'Zhan Newton can play both because he is a great run and pass defender. Now, he plays with an inconsistent pad level like we mentioned with Rook Arororo, but I think that can come an improvement. I think that can be coached. Same thing for everyone who plays with too high of a pad level. Rook Arororo, Jer'Zhan Newton, I think that can be coached so they can get better at it and play with a lower pad level. It's just a criticism right now. But yeah, he can be neutralized when his pad level is too big. But once again, that can be coached out of him. He is so talented. He will be able to learn that, and he will be able to adjust, play with a better pad level, and then become super, super dominant, because I believe in the upside that Jer'Zhan Newton brings to an NFL team. Now, in 44 games, Newton has 80 solo tackles, 107 assist tackles. He has 187 total tackles with 27.5 tackles for loss and 18 sacks. Now, moving on to my number 1 interior defensive lineman in this year's class, it is going to be none other than Byron Murphy out of Texas. Now, this isn't the Byron Murphy who was drafted with the first pick in the 2nd round in 2019. He was the corner out of Washington. This is Byron Murphy II, the defensive lineman out of Texas. Now, Murphy is a strong and explosive player who has the upside of a 3-down player on defense, being able to play on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. He's very effective as both a run defender and as a pass rusher. Now, Murphy explodes off the line of scrimmage and uses his strength to get past blockers easily and quickly, and very effective as well. Now, he is undersized for a defensive lineman, and he is by far the most undersized defensive lineman in this top 10 at least, maybe even in the class. He is only 6 feet. He's only 6 foot and 1/2 inches tall. So 6.5 feet tall. He is 297 pounds, but he is an extremely athletic defensive lineman who ran a 4.87 40-yard dash, which is really good for defensive linemen. He also had a 34-inch vertical and a 9-foot 3-inch broad jump, and he benched 28 reps at 225 during the NFL Combine. Now, Murphy has a high motor, which makes him a great pass rusher and a great run defender. He ate up blocks to free up his teammates to make plays similar to T'Vondre Sweat. They kind of did it to each other. They were both capable of doing so, and that's why Texas was such a formidable opponent this past season, being able to eat up the blocks, being able to stop the run game, being able to rush the passer. These two interior guys in Murphy and Sweat, they were a big reason as to why Texas was so dominant, especially on defense. Murphy, though, especially. Now, he has a variety of pass rush moves to easily beat blockers. He's not a one-trick pony. He can get by guys. If he needs to rush the quarterback, he's not a one-trick pony in terms of his move on how he's going to beat his blocker. Has a wide variety and a wide arsenal of moves to get by his blocker. Now, during his career with the Texas Longhorns, he played in 34 games with 32 solo tackles, 38 assist tackles, 70 total tackles, and 15 tackles for loss with 8 sacks. But yeah, that is my defensive lineman ranking. I'm sorry for stuttering at the beginning. I'm not proud of it. I would normally start over because like I just messed up. But honestly, things happen. Sometimes I stutter, sometimes I have a lisp, sometimes, maybe I'm trying to say something but don't have the best grammar. Those things happen. I'm not perfect and, things happen. So, of course, I'm going to just kind of roll with the flow as long as it's not too bad. I'm going to keep going. But thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe as the support is greatly appreciated. Thank you all so much for watching. Jesus loves you. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.